Hello, good evening. Welcome back to another series, Antinanco and PAZA celebration of webinars and all the wonderful things that we're bringing, on every 2 weeks. Um, Things like we're going to share tonight. We have tonight's guest, one very wonderful person, Denee Bex, sorry, and she's she's an advocate of many talents and a nutritionist. And tonight, I just want to share more about that, and we're happy to have her, and I want to learn more about what should, the knowledge and things like that. So tonight's, got any questions, feel free afterwards we get done, or when we have time to discuss those things, let us know, and feel free. And so I guess we'll start tonight. Okay, my name is Down Fiddler again, your host, and thank you for everybody to bring people like this together as one and continue our education with each other as nations and nation develops. So I guess you could start with kind of give me a background where how did you became in this location? I guess how did you start with your knowledge, and how did you get into that kind of where you're at now? What was the start? Like, was it shown by elders, or was it given a time to bring people together, or how did you just came up? It was just a natural thing, or?
So, yat everyone. She Denee Bex Yinishia. Nanisht Ajitachini Nishlin. Maideshki Bashin. So hello everyone. That is me introducing myself in Navajo. My name is Denee Bex. I am red running into the Water Clan, and I am born for the Coyote Pass Clan. So I'm actually, I'm Navajo, and I just wanted to share my journey with you about growing up on the res, but also getting into gardening. So I grew up on the res, born and raised here on the Navajo Nation. And so ever since, from a young age, I've always wanted to grow things on my own. I think that, the Navajo Nation is a food desert. And so since I was little, I was always interested in how things grew, and how we can grow food. So I remember, I remember specifically when I was, maybe 10 or 11, I was really into the Wizard of Oz, watching the Wizard of Oz at that time. And I remember vividly thinking, like, when the trees are throwing apples at Dorothy. And I was like, holy cow, apples grow off of trees. I had no idea. And that just like blew my mind. I didn't know I literally didn't know where apples came from. And it's probably because I grew up in a food desert, and the only food we had around was from the store, and we were just really disconnected from the food system. At that time, my family grew up on a lot of processed foods, like Hamburger Helper and spaghetti mixes and a lot of those items. So since then, I've been just growing things here and there, and I was naturally attracted to food and nutrition and how it can feed us and how it can feed our bodies to help us be healthy. And that's where I became a dietitian. Since then, I've always wanted to come back to the reservation, because when I became a dietitian, my training was actually out at Arizona State University. And then after that, I got my master's of public health, and my concentration was in community education. So I've always been leaning towards community. So I wanted to just basically serve my community, and that's where now I'm a dietitian at the hospital. But on the side, I do a lot of gardening. I kind of allow space for people to talk about gardening. I have a Facebook page right now. And so, but one of the things I really like to talk about on my Facebook page, and I'm always posting videos, is my worm composting. And just to let you know, you can always put something in the chat box if you have any questions along the way. I'll have it up just in case. So worm composting. I know when I told my family, I started dabbling in worm composting about 3 years ago. And I told my sister, I told my sister that I got worms. And she was just laughing. Because I don't know if you watch like Dumb and Dumber,
Yeah, 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 yeah.
but the part where he says like, I got worms,
Yeah.
I'm that person now. So, so anytime I talk about my worms, I always have to say, I got worms. um, but so the reason why I was thinking of starting worms was because one, I have a compost bin outside that I take care of while I'm outside, but during the winter when, you know, it's harder to like go trudge out in the snow, using the worms is a little bit easier. I can just go in my garage and like throw some stuff in there I need to compost. And they break it down for me, and that's what worm composting is. Like the fancy term is vermicomposting. So vermi means worm, and it's not any worm you know, it's not any worm that'll do the job. It's actually a specific type of worm that I use that's best for worm composting. So they call them red wigglers. They call them red wigglers, and they're basically the best because they're colony worms. When you see them in the bin, they actually kind of all bunch together and jumble together because they're breaking down that food. Whereas if you got like worms from outside in the ground, those are like native worms. They're kind of like the lone wolves of worms. They just don't want to be together. They don't want to be with anybody. So that's why the red wigglers are best, because they can kind of break down things quickly. And they also thrive in smaller spaces. And then they top feed. So like the first 4 or 5 inches, that's where they get most of their food. And so that's where you throw the stuff you want to compost on top. And again, like I said, they create compost faster. So I should mention, so one of the things, at least from a dietitian's perspective, because like I said, I'm a dietitian at the hospital, I feel like everything that we need to be healthy for our body can come from nature. So fruits and vegetables give us vitamins and minerals. And so all these different foods, having a variety of foods, is going to give us the best type of nutrition. And actually, let me throw out a fancy word, the bioavailability of those nutrients, meaning like of those nutrients is actually better when it's locked in those fruits and vegetables. I'll relate this to the worms soon. but that's what I always think. Yeah. And so and that's what research backs up, is that the nutrition that's in those fruits and vegetables naturally is better absorbed by our bodies. And so I kind of think I've kind of started to translate that to the garden, whereas, you know, everything that the garden needs can be found in nature. Most of what the garden needs can be found in nature. And that's kind of one of the reasons why I wanted to vermicompost, because it's like, you know, they create this amazing source of nutrients for our garden, for our earth. And so it's like, why not do it? That was my conclusion. It's like, you know, that's what the earth needs. It needs that source of nutrition, that more natural nutrition, if you will. So that's why I kind of wanted to start composting with worms as well. So of course you can buy it, but making it is a lot cheaper. And if you live out here on the res like us, you know, you're not going to have access to nurseries. You're not going to have access to all these other things that might be more available in the city. And then also, I know, like with all of the kitchen waste that you have, you can kind of prevent all of that kitchen waste from going into the landfill. And you're using up trash basically, because I know a lot of people, like, you know, when they shred carrots, they shred potatoes, and I'm like, no, that's gold. That's like good nutrition. Don't throw it away. And also it's really cool to get kids involved. I don't have any kids, but I have like neighbor kids who come by and help me with the worms to help feed them and everything. So that's kind of what some things to keep in mind if you're thinking about starting to compost with worms. So somebody once told me that gardening can be as cheap or expensive as you want it to be. So I keep that in mind, because there's many options different ways to garden and to grow your own vegetables. So whatever works for you, that's what works for you. I'm not going to say one way is the best way or anything. The way I do it is, if you see, look to the right of the screen, is I just set up some bins that I made myself, and I drilled a couple of holes, and we'll go over like how to set that up. But there's also actually like containers or specially made items that you can purchase online. And these are just a couple of shots that I got of them that are specifically geared toward vermicomposting. So I tend to go more on the cheaper side of things. So that's what I do. But there's like these really intricate, like triple, quadruple layer ones, like the black one you see. I've seen some people do it in bathtubs, like old bathtubs. I was actually thinking, I have like an old ice chest that I have that's just been sitting there. The wheels are broken. I think I'm going to convert that into a bin just because it gives better insulation. So anything works really, as long as it's, not going to disintegrate after if it gets wet. So like I said, the left one is what I have in my garage right now, and I just set it up. So the top two are the ones that I add food to, my kitchen waste to, and the bottom one, that was actually the blue with the blue lid on it. That one is actually finished compost that I had sifted out earlier this year. So once spring hits, I'm going to take out that bucket, and when I transplant my plant, then I'm going to throw a handful of that finished compost in with it, and that'll kind of give it a good nutrition boost. So then that way there's kind of less than that transplant shock.
Oh my goodness.
So that's what I'm going to do. And then the other picture is just like from the top view of what it looks like and what you can put in there. So I usually like to keep like a little shovel next to it, so I could just move some stuff out of the way, put the stuff in, put the food in, and then cover it back up. So if you are thinking about starting up a worm bin, the way I did it, and you can do it however way you want or whatever way works best for you. If you have pretty big containers that you want to take advantage of, just use whatever you have on hand. Try to look for a large plastic colored tote, dark colored tote, like 18 to 30 gallons. Those Rubbermaid totes that you store stuff in is pretty good. 2 bricks, a drill, and 1/2-inch drill bits for the holes, and then the actual bedding material for the worms, and water. So this is basically, that's a little fuzzy, but this is basically what the setup looks like. This one has 3 bins. You can do that if you want. I know that there's some people who do like a 3-bin system, but if you're just starting out, all you need is 1 bin at this point. And then once you kind of get used to doing it, you can kind of start adding on bins and doing it like those layers, like how they had it. That's how this one has it. But basically, you just want the bin, put the bedding in, make sure it's kind of moist, and then you stick your worms in there. But this is just an example of how you can set it up. Some people actually, at the bottom where it says tap for tea, they actually hook up like a spigot. And that's what I have on mine. That's what I made for myself. But honestly, I don't find it so useful. So, because it gets clogged easily, and it's just, I was just thinking like, okay, maybe that wasn't so helpful, but I don't know, maybe it works for some other people, but it didn't work for me. So, and that's just to let out some of there's liquid that kind of falls to the bottom or pools at the bottom, and then you can drain out that liquid, because you don't want the actual compost and bedding like completely drenched, because worms breathe through their skin, so they still need oxygen. So you want the bedding like damp, but you don't want it like soaking wet, because you don't want to drown them either. So what counts as bedding? So bedding is basically like their house. Think of their house. So you want something that has like a neutral pH, nothing too acidic or alkaline. You want something that can retain moisture, allows for oxygen, contains carbon, and it must be moist. So when you squeeze it, after you moisten it, it has to be like a damp washcloth. It has to feel like that, not like a sopping wet washcloth. So you can use shredded unbleached paper, shredded cardboard, shredded newspaper that's not colored, peat moss, straw, and hay and old leaves. So this year I actually started doing something a little bit different. In the years before, I was just using straight shredded newspaper, and I found that it really compacted. So what I started doing this year was I'm doing half peat moss, half shredded newspaper or cardboard. And it kind of gives it a different texture, and it's a little bit easier to move around. It's a little bit fluffier, but you can just play around with it as long as they have those items. And then if the straw and hay, just make sure you chop it up. So that way you can stick it in the bin a little bit easier. Just nothing sticking out. Okay, so the question is, what should I feed them? So if you are familiar with composting, like regular old composting outside, most of that applies. Well, but there are a few exceptions, because outside it's a little bit easier to handle if you have a good system outside. But with the worms, they're a little sensitive to some food, so we want to be mindful about that. The things that I use mostly when I put my food in there, kitchen waste in there, I typically just use old coffee grounds, old tea bags. You can do potato peels, vegetable peels, fruit peels, and banana peels. Those are all really good ones to put in there. And you should kind of feed them about once a week, once they kind of get established. And they break down things pretty quickly. So the worms, so if you were to weigh pick out all the little worms and weigh them on a scale, they eat about half their weight. So if you have like a pound worth of worms, you can do half a pound each week of old food. So the eggshells, I know you can throw eggshells in the regular compost bin. I tend not to, unless I grind it into a fine powder, then I do. But it's, for me, I just think of all that calcium content and we already have hard enough water. It may be different for you in your area, but you can try it. I have seen people do it. My suggestion would be ground it into a powder so it's easier for them to break it down. And it's a little bit rougher on them too, but it won't really hurt them, but just make sure it's ground into a powder. So yeah, that's kitchen waste. Right now, actually, I still have a lot of pumpkins that I harvested last year. And I've just been cutting up those pumpkins and putting them into chunks and just sticking them in there. So I haven't been really using a lot of my own kitchen waste. I've been using all of my kitchen waste and putting it outside in my other compost bin. So what should I not feed them? So all that on a taco, Indian taco is a no-no.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, I need to eat. That's making me hungry.
Yeah, I know. Sorry.
Oh my goodness.
So, like I said, so the worms can be really sensitive to some things. What I don't suggest is putting in citrus peels, onions, greasy or oily foods, animal products like cheese and dairy, or lard or steak or pork chops. That's a no-no. Everything except for the eggshells, because eggshell is technically an animal product, but you get all the egg out, and don't do salty food, because again, just think of the worms as like yourself. When your hands are in really salty like water or something, they tend to get irritated. So just think whatever environment you enjoy as a human, the worms will enjoy. So we don't want to stick them into a salty home. And dairy products, like I had mentioned. So the Indian taco, it's like all no, because it's like greasy fry bread, you got the meat, you got the cheese. You should probably pick out like the lettuce and the tomatoes, but that's about it. And somebody had a question. What about rotten or moldy fruits and veggies? That one I actually do, because this is what the worm does. So the worm actually the worm actually doesn't eat the food. So let's say if I put a pumpkin into the bin, it doesn't actually like chew on the food, on the pumpkin. What it does is it waits for that pumpkin to be broken down by like bacteria or molds, and then the worm eats that mold. So actually, if you have rotten or moldy fruits, that's actually you've already like started the process for them. Like if you find something at the bottom of your fridge and you're like, oh, there's a big old moldy apple in there that I forgot about. Or if you got like some brown bananas that are way past even banana bread, bananas, then you put that in there too. Because the worm is actually eating the like the mold and stuff. What about fermented foods like kimchi that are low salt and low oil? Typically fermented foods are pretty salty because the way they make fermented foods like sauerkraut and kimchi is that they put it in a salt solution to help with that anaerobic bacteria growth. So I personally wouldn't put fermented foods in there because I'm just thinking that they're super salty, like kimchi or sauerkraut. You could try it, but for myself, I would just stick that out in the regular compost bin. Yeah, that's how I would handle it. I guess that's the only fermented foods, right? Kimchi and sauerkraut. Really, there's tempeh, maybe tempeh. I'm trying to think of all the fermented foods. Wine, probably not wine. Wine's fermented, not vinegar. So remember, like they thrive in an environment that your skin would thrive in. So we probably don't want to be sitting in a bath of kimchi for very long. So okay. So I had already mentioned like a little bit of ways how I use vermicompost, but here are some other ways. So this is actually my the chili plants that I grew last year and the tomato plants. I had them outside soaking up the sun. But what I did was I mixed the amount, like I said, I mixed some of the vermicompost into the transplant soil. So you can mix it into there. You can mix it if you have any house plants. Sometimes let me get a cup. If I had a cup, I'd fill it up with like this much of vermicompost and then fill up the rest with water. And then just kind of pour a little bit in to each of the house plants. Because that gives them some extra nutrients and nitrogen that they might not have access to, because container plants, they don't have like the bacteria they would outside. So that vermicompost provides that good bacteria and good microorganisms. So again, mix into soil when transplanting. You can mix into seed starting mix if you feel comfortable with that. Sometimes you'll just have to see what it will look like. You can do that, but I have yet to do it, and so I don't have enough experience to say like, oh, don't do it or do it, because every environment is different. So if it's really humid, then it might cause those microorganisms to multiply, like the molds and stuff. So you could try it. Tell me what happened. So, okay. So like I had mentioned, well, maybe I didn't mention it, but vermicompost, I am pretty much self-taught. I did buy a book because I was really worried about the worms because I didn't want to kill them. So I actually bought a book that I found online on Amazon. I don't remember what it was, but it basically just went over what we went over right now, like what kind of materials and what you need, what you got to keep in mind, what are the best worms. There was an article that I found with Rodale Institute that's actually really good. And the worms, so like I mentioned, red wigglers are the best kind of worms to help you vermicompost. So you can actually buy them online, and that's what I did. If you have a friend that vermicomposts, so worms actually double in size like every 2 months.
Oh.
So as long as they're given enough food, as long as they're given a good environment, they actually double in size 2 months. So if you order half a pound online, in 2 more months, you're going to have 1 pound. And then 2 months after that, you're going to have 2 pounds. And then 2 months after that, you're going to have 4 pounds. So they can, as long as they're given enough food, they're given a friendly environment. So I know one person I got into worm composting. She said she only ordered half a pound. I only ordered half a pound when I started, and now I had to separate it into 2 bins, and now I'm thinking of starting up a 3rd bin. So, and again, there's a lot of really good resources on YouTube too, and that's kind of what I did as well, just to see how other people's setups are. So that lettuce is what I grew last year, and that was with the vermicompost that I had. So it looks so beautiful. I just love looking at that picture. That's why I put it up. And I think so. Let's not have our cats fertilize it. Let's have our worms fertilize it. So cats are not our best composters. Let's try to make it worms. So good luck. If you have any questions, I am more than happy to answer your questions. If you want to email me, or if you have a question, email me when you're setting it up. Like I'm more than happy to talk with you or email you back and forth about it. I think that was it. Is there anything else?
Yeah, I guess I got a couple questions. I was wondering how much do you have? Like when like you said, when you grow to a pound to 2 pounds, do you give it away? Because I mean, it sounds like, I think we need to create a farm or something. I don't know, because it's getting to the point where you probably need that with all the other people that's real close by with those other reservations nearby. There's 225 nations just within your area. I mean, the surrounding part anyway. That most people never heard of, but I'm just saying, like, they need that kind of. I never heard of this, because it's really there's kind of park rangers. I was speaking a couple of weeks ago, about a month and a half ago, asking about those kind of questions to me, and they're like, what can you be best to establish that kind of medicine or nutrition wise to make the tree grow, for example. Years ago they had the you probably heard the Black Hills got on fire. Well, I know they just recently had a fire, but years ago they just the story goes, if you don't come in pure heart, that things will kind of like what cleans itself. But the thing is that it's having a hard time. They said it for the past 5 years. They've been trying to plant things back on that mountain, what we call Bear Butte. But every nation has a different name for it, but we all go there for that same reasons, for the medicines. And we was just there this past November, and this is a good source. I was thinking, because it's about the worms in the life, because you can see elk, you can see all kinds of stuff in that mountain. You just get, we've seen a buffalo there, but they were asking me, how can you bring the tree back to life? Maybe you need a prayer, you need this coming summer in June, we have all this, like I was saying before, wonderful people coming together to participate in that groundbreaking, like the start of that, put the nutritions, mix that, or whatever, how you say, to start that life again within that area, because it's used to be so much trees around there, but now it's just due to I would not say park rangers, but the people in general don't, how you said, have that same love or responsibility or accountability of trying to bring that nature back. If you take a tree, you should plant 2 trees, or for sun dances, for example, or if you take sweetgrass, you should plant a couple seeds of wheatgrass, something like that, but it's just something we have to practice.
And they say, like, the worms are where the healthiest dirt is at, where the healthiest soil is at, because they break down all of those byproducts in nature, like dead plants, all this other stuff. So the healthiest soil has a lot of worms in it. And that's what helps attract other worms too. They say, hey, that area is really fertile, let's go over there. And the worms will help kind of aerate the soil as well as they're moving along. And I think that would be an awesome idea if we had like a native farm that grew worms. I would definitely buy some worms from them. That would be a really cool business model. So, I think that would be pretty cool, because, I ordered mine online, and I probably supported some guy way out on the East Coast. So, and they sent their worms over to me, but I would much rather buy something that's local. I would, and something that supports like Navajo economy or native run economy. So that's how I would feel about it. But again, maybe we'll get there.
Oh yeah.
Maybe, I mean, we'll get there. It just takes time, and it just takes more people getting used to talking about worms as a source of nutrition for our soil.
How many worms are there anyway? Like different types? I mean, like you read regulars, but I think I said same ones that we fish with. I think it looks like it. I was
Yeah,
just like my dad would just go on how to get it and go for it. You know, we catch
so
a fish.
I'm definitely not a zoologist, but from what I understand, from what I read is like there's thousands of species of worms.
Oh, okay.
And on that article I had mentioned in the presentation, they go over like the actual scientific name for the red worm, but there are other worms as well that you can use. And even on that website, Uncle Jim's Farm, this isn't an endorsement or anything, but they have other worms that you can raise for like fishing and stuff. Because the worms I have, they're kind of skinny. So I don't think they would be very tasty for fish.
Well, that's one of the things I never really pay attention to. Obviously, my dad was like, "How come you don't fish that one?" I was like, "I don't know. I just can't. I can't see life going to hook." And then my brothers, they fish, but me, I'm just like, "Oh gosh, I'm saying prayers while like you're saying, nature." I'm like, "Oh my God!" And then they put it in the water, and next thing you know, a fish comes out, and then 2 seconds later, they're filleting it. Next thing you know, it's dinner. So I'm like, I mean, I'm happy to eat it, but again, it's just like I just can't. I mean, I don't even care. I don't even want to hook on it. I just want to just throw it out there, just to do it. But I'm trying to leave nature the way it is. But if I'm hungry enough, I will eat it.
I'll try to leave nature the way it is.
But I always got. But in that kind of sense, my dad and them used to get mad at me. How come you don't hunt? Or whatever. And I was like, no, I hunt. I cut track and stuff, but I just can't. I don't know. I'm a different type of human being.
I hunt in the grocery store.
Yeah. That's just a couple of my relatives down south that I think we met them. They had a couple of documentaries of these different natives that I don't know how far they got in with the other communities, but the different people over the amongst Arizona, New Mexico area, that just in the general area, have so much. It's just that it's like almost we got to have a conference or a gathering or something on, because we got to connect those individuals together, because they're hunting and actually some sent the medicines back to the ground. And then I never knew that worms. I mean, I've been talking to a lot of people, but again, it's like it's kind of going in one ear out the other. But actually seeing that kind of presentation, like I said, I just think about fishing, but that's a big help. That's a big help for the growth of things. Because usually we just throw it out. We buy at the store, we cut it up, and we throw it in the trash or to the compost. But actually, on the reservations, some places we don't have neighbors that 5 miles apart. Hopefully I can share that with the people that come in June. I can share the how far the neighbors are per se. So you have that. You can have a little space to create that, but in the cities you don't have that kind of stuff. You can't have those things.
Yeah, and every location has its challenges, and every community is a little bit different, and that's why I think worm composting is really helpful. Because if you live like in a smaller house, or you don't have a lot of land around you to kind of spread out, then it's I think worms can be confined to a smaller space, so you can compost that way. But if you have like a little bit more land, you can have like those 3-bin systems for composting, where you are able to kind of spread out. But everywhere is a little bit difficult, and that's where I think like raising worms is helpful, because you can do it pretty much anywhere. Like if you live in an apartment, down in Phoenix or Albuquerque. You need to be growing some worms. I used to live in Denver, and I keep thinking back when I lived in Denver in an apartment. I was anyway, that was a trip. But I was like, why didn't I grow worms? Why didn't I find out about worms when I lived in Denver? So
what did you do? Go down to the Garden of the Gods and did some ceremony down and then brought the worms back? No, just kidding. Went to the sandstones to kind of put some tech in and then make it happen. You know, we got sandstone worms, you got the Garden of God's worms, you know, you put them together and then
and then there'll be mighty red worms.
You got the empire worms that grow everywhere.
Exactly.
You know? That should be talking later. But
somebody else had mentioned that they got their worms 2 years ago from New Mexico farmers in Albuquerque, and then they brought them back to our home. Awesome.
Wow.
I wonder which farm that was. I remember I went to a Flagstaff farmers market, which is like 3 hours from where I'm at. There was this guy that was selling like little tiny cups of worms, and that was before like I knew anything about worms. I didn't like know what kind of home to bring them home to. But he convinced me that I needed the worms. And sadly that batch didn't make it, and I still feel really horrible about it because I did all the wrong things when I brought them home, and I still feel guilt about it 3 years later. 4 years later.
Is that why you have that picture of the big giant taco? So is that what you fed them? Because it's a big reminder, do not feed them tacos because it's not good.
So after I killed them off, basically. After that, I was like, never again. I'm going to commit to it this time. I'm not going to kill you. So that's when I bought my book and I started really reading into it. And here I am talking about worms with complete strangers. Good news.
It's the worm lady.
It's the worm lady. Navajo worm lady.
If I go down to the place, what's wrong with that guy? They always call me crazy all the time. I go to different nations. I said, well, when you travel to these different powwows events and meet wonderful people ongoing and just keeping you on, and you know, you meet a lot of good people in that kind of sense of conferences and stuff. And the conversations, especially if you speak in language and then you know, share that knowledge, and then you know, you go over there and you come back and say, well, these guys are doing something like this, but it's kind of funny, you know. And it's weird, but it's actually helps. And that's where we used to, a lot of people years ago, some people asked me, and I was in Switzerland, I was over there for about 4 months, and they're asking me like, well, how come you people, you know, we follow the Lakota, but why do you guys always go this way or that way in this different circular things? Well, we never was to, we follow the buffalo. So, but the buffalo are the farmers, you know, because as they're running, they're, you know, reproducing that stuff, but it's going back into the ground. It's going back to the soil. So everywhere they step, all those nutritional things that we, you know, plants, berries, and everything else they eat comes back to life, and that's as they travel abroad. Now you see a lot of people say, well, they don't want to see the buffalo, but the buffalo's actually replanting that, just like the wolves, you know, kind of bring back to the water and the drifts, you know, make it solid with the worms. I never knew how nature plays a big role in our lives, of course, but again, we just got to reconnect back to our worms.
Yeah, and we take it for granted how nature works, and that there's this whole ecosystem there that's kind of everything depends on each other, and I think it's really cool. I mean, even like in nutrition, just going back to like my professional role as a dietitian, like I just keep thinking back, like there's even stuff in fruits and vegetables and food, like whole foods, that science doesn't even understand how it helps. Like there's stuff in fruits and veggies that helps with blood pressure. And they think it's the magnesium and the magnesium and potassium that helps with that. But when you supplement that in like pill form, it doesn't do anything. So it's like, it's just the way that that potassium and the magnesium and other antioxidants are locked into that fruit or vegetable that actually is healthy for our body, and our body knows how to handle. And if it comes like artificially through a supplement, then it's not as beneficial. So that's kind of how I think of it, and that's kind of how I think of when I garden. It's like, I'm just trying to encourage that circle of life, you know, in whatever way I can.
That's good, because every time I see back home when I, on the reservations, I tell people, because you go to powwows or something, you sometimes have like now, because of the pandemic, I know we're gonna have a lot of babies, a lot of people are gonna have kids, whatever. I don't know who, you'll find out who's whatever, but I'm glad that Gifts of Life is coming back. I always say in a powwow way, not just to make a thing, you say, well, have more babies, they're chasing their kids around and they don't, they're, so like, just stay home and have more babies.
Just stay home. What are you doing at the powwow? You're supposed to be home.
Yeah. Just stay. You got 10 kids already. You can't even take care of them. You can't even manage them. So just stay home and lock the door. But again, that kind of sense is that nutritional value, that beneficial, medicine within this, just within how we're communicating. Like like you're saying again, and just having the worms kind of showing us how to be more. Trying to come together in that way to make something better, to grow,
connected.
And unfortunately, some people don't have that same different lives or whatever. But again, it's like trying to, like, now, years ago when I was younger, I didn't really even, I know a lot of stuff, but I never was this outspoken or trying to share stories and songs like that with everybody. I'll just kind of stay to myself. But now I have a daughter now, and it's doing things like this and educating the world per se. Now I'm just like, oh, happy, let's go, let's go get worms or whatever. It's like, I don't know what I'm doing, but let's just go. I got some traditions. They jump in the water during winter times, which I'm still trying to get used to that thing. I tried it just didn't work out. I cried like a baby. But and then this other nation, they try to do things with the alligators down south. There's different customs that like Northwest, they make sure they want to know about the canoes and stuff like that. You go to Canada, they make sure that you got to understand that the antlers, because sometimes the antlers look like branches. I learned very quickly at one time. I was canoeing on the Minnesota border of Canada, and I thought it was a branch, and it turned out to be a moose. I never seen a moose in my life ever, but that was the biggest moose ever in my life I ever seen, like up close. And I screamed like a woman. I was like, ah! And I was like, I think I did 60 miles per hour on that canoe, and my canoe went like this. And that's the fastest I ever seen my canoe move. I was struggling with it, but that time I moved quick. But I learned to, while they're kind of going to water, doing their thing, and they're part of nature. Again, nature plays a big part in our lives, and if we could just try to encourage that with their lives as well, try and protect them the best way we can, they can do their part to make our lives better.
So were there any other, I was wondering if anybody else was wondering about this stuff, worming?
Are you implementing any plans to where you're at now, to your location now? Or is there anybody talking about putting on like facilitating something like that, like a greenhouse nearby? Or because we're in the is anybody looking for information like that way? Because maybe one of the things that we're trying to do is also trying to expand that as well with the other nations or
yeah. So one of the things I do on the side too is I manage a Facebook group called Navajo Land Gardeners and Farmers. If you Navajo spell Navajo. But like I said, it's basically a bulletin board for what other gardeners or farmers are doing in the area. And I know we have some people who are not on the reservation, or we have some of our community members like living way out in Florida and stuff, but they just want to see what's going on. And I know a lot of people are kind of posting what they're doing. So I see a lot of people putting up greenhouses. There's a lot of initiatives to help people set up raised beds. So I can't think of anybody specifically, but if you join that garden, then that's a good way to kind of spread the word if you have any opportunities, or if you want to help in any way. That's a way to kind of spread the word to see if anybody needs help setting up their garden. But like I said, I'm merely the vessel for to disseminate the information.
Like,
But there's a lot of really cool stuff that other people are doing, and I am just amazed at how everyone is just how we're just kind of supporting each other and trying to grow our own food. So it's really amazing, and I'm hoping more and more people will start thinking about setting up their own gardens, and I'm hoping that the Facebook group can at least provide some sort of support for that. But yeah, does that answer your question? I went on a tangent.
Oh gosh, that's fine. No, I'm just saying, because I just want to know, because sometimes in that kind of setting, they want to, one time I was working in a hospital, and they're like, you just focus on your thing, that's it, you don't go over here this department, talk about theirs. And because a lot of community members, like I used to be a CHR / environmental health technician role per se, and that's kind of do with your health. I used to look at people's homes, inside environment and outside environment, and then how, because every home had a different climate, different location, had a different scenario per se. But the way they're eating, and then how the inside home was some of them were just, it's a different environment per se. So, but sometimes people are not showing that way, how to be more just the basic life skills and stuff like that, how to participate in, what does that look like, because, we're some of our relatives just don't seem to, I don't know how you say it, just don't want to follow the rules of, I guess, just basic households. They rather be in a teepee. They want to be in a teepee. They want to be in a hogan or whatever. And I get that, but at the same time, so that having that connection, it kind of showed me, it shared, but also the community members that were down, I want to sit down about this. And the one was having problems with foxes, and the other community was having problems with groundhogs. They don't know what groundhogs were, or, like the badgers is the other community. And they're like, well, you're the guy that's supposed to help me figure this out. And then, I spent a couple of days trying to figure this out, like, well, what could best way? And I always came back to food. It wasn't the poisons and everything, it was food. They brought that certain kind of food out, they'll come out and you trap them, but so I'll be the guy, I'll be going, trying to help the community out, because they'll come in, but they don't know. It's crazy.
And I think at least working in a hospital setting, I think with westernized medicine, it's really easy to kind of get stuck in silos, like how you had mentioned with stay in your lane, you don't need to do that. And I think what we tend to forget, especially in westernized hospital medical settings, is that everything's related. And like when I talk to patients with diabetes, sometimes I talk to them about their stress, even though they came to me for nutrition. Like I'm talking to them about their stress and their sleep, because, I got moms who are sleeping on like 5 hours, and they were just diagnosed with like prediabetes, and it's probably because they're not sleeping enough. So what we forget is that it's all related, and a lot of it comes down to how you feel mentally about yourself, and then also what you're eating. And so it always kind of comes back to, it's all a circle. They're all connected. And so it gets kind of frustrating when we have people who are used to this, westernized thinking of just like, this is all I have to do. I'm just going to focus on this one thing and just forget about everything else. It's like, I'll take, for example, like if I have a patient with diabetes and I find out that they don't have electricity, they don't have running water, they don't have a car. And then they have like, kids who are drinking on the weekends. How are they mentally? How are they, like, all of this is related. How do we get this all, like, how do we help this person, with also without demeaning them, but also, we have to recognize that it's not just about, you have to do what I tell you.
Mm.
You just need to take your medications and you need to eat your fruits and vegetables and then you'll be fine. It's like, it's not that simple. If it was that simple, then, everybody
What,
would have diabetes.
you're right,
It's,
right. And that's
it's,
where, yeah, it's kind of like, I kind of got that from if on Sharon Valley Tribe Reservation from east side to west side, so different. But it's like you're saying, they're like, well, Darwin, what does that have to do with me as a dancer? It has to do with a cowboy or rancher or whatever. And I'm like, has to do everything about that. But some of the resources are not there for that family. They don't have somebody that has a 9 to 5 job, or they're surviving day to day just what they have, and it's like a common theme across the board. And that's one of the things that kind of bother me nightly. I think about it, and then I'm like, well, how can we, um, like you're saying, like, put that out there so they can be more. Hence, I'm trying to put something structurally, trying to put some to the foundation I was saying earlier. So you have those resources where to go, and then
yeah,
we're all participating in that knowledge-based knowledge that we have to share with that family or individually if they want to take it. We're not saying we're not gonna, because today they're like, well, here's A, B, C, this is what you gotta do. Here you go. Now that we helped you, I can get paid because I'm getting paid $25 for giving this paper to you because I'm giving you the information. But this piece of paper does not help me with my diabetes or what kind of the atmosphere of how do I supposed to participate to bring that back the healthy way, the
yeah,
balance back, but
yeah. And I think sometimes at the end of the day, it's just like people want to be heard.
mhm.
That's how a lot of my counseling sessions end, is it's people just want to be heard. That's
Yeah,
it.
yes,
Because they're just
exactly.
carrying so much stress and they're carrying so much mental burdens that it can be a lot. And that's where I bring up, building skills,
Mm,
um, that to help kind of help cope with that situation, gardening being one of them, to help with, relaxing and, um, at least being a little bit more self-sufficient, um, and feeling like they're able to control something in their life,
mm,
because a lot of people, they don't feel like they can. So that's kind of how I tie in gardening. When I circle back to gardening, it's about building skills, building confidence, uh, building coping skills to
mm.
handle all this other stuff going on in your life, and
I like that.
also to help with, their blood sugar management too.
Mm,
So,
mm,
so I view it kind of in more of a holistic sense instead of just
mm.
being like, well, I don't work in community, so I shouldn't be talking about gardening. No, but it's
Exactly,
something
but
I
we need it.
enjoy.
We
It's
need those
something I
worms.
enjoy. We need those worms. Everybody needs worms.
Yeah, we just need worms.
Everybody
Oh,
needs worms. It'll solve everything.
it will solve everything. If I knew this
Um,
years ago, because my dad was asking me before he passed on, he was asking me about gardening, and I was like, I have no idea where to start, because our traditional lands, my dad had our family long ago, like 50s, 60s, 70s, had a huge, we had like a 5 miles of gardens, different types of food, squash, watermelons, tomatoes, potatoes, everything, and just a huge, and that's what they take care of, but over time in 80s and 90s, it just kind of like within relatives, whatever, how that is, how you say, selling off the land or just giving it up or whatever, it kind of lost that love for the land per se. But they asked him, my dad was like, well, since you're junior, can you bring that back? But again, it's a different time frame when the ancestors don't set you up for success, and they, in that kind of sense, so you had to start something for wherever you may be now to accommodate that. But you just keep on striving for that to better, trying to find an outlet, I guess, to bring that garden back of life, garden of life, I guess I call it. Well, the nutrition is mentally, physically, spiritually, emotionally, your pathway, your worms, and how to prepare your food, and then how do you extract that, and then as we're cutting the vegetables stuff, we can get right back to the circle of life again, back to the, to the worms again, the, like you're saying, the vermiculture and the compost, and that kind of it starts the process again, so that's a very good. I guess I'm gonna put that in my mind, if that's okay, Bex, because like I got a couple of weeks from now, I got a demonstration. I got prove, not say prove, but do I'm a hoop dancer, right? So I kind of use the hoops of life, trying to talk about different things of your pathways and how you connect that to the ladder of each success. But it goes again, and you keep climbing. But as you individually have your own self-stating, starts with one, then you become two, then it becomes three, then we come up this way, you got three now, then you got put about two more, then you become an eagle. Now that you got your wings, it depends how far you want to go. You can go from here to space, where you can go way up in the sky and then come back down. But again, the level of understand that balance is up to you. But again, encouragement, and then together we fly together in that kind of way. It's just my way of thinking, educating, just in general, when I go around the world in different places, to share that. And because a lot of people don't have that opportunity to be, our people, our distant fellow human beings, have so much knowledge, but don't have the outlet to express that. A place to, like you said, to be heard, or sometimes you just want to be venting, or I do got people call me time to time to vent, whatever that is, because I tell them, say, just come on, bring it on. We'll find time to make sure that you're straight, you're right, and to release that negativity, because that's not good, and if you're feeling some kind of way, then that kind of pertains to your health. If you're not sleeping, it is true that if you eat certain kind of fruits, it kind of changes your pH balance, and it kind of changes your emotions, and almost like being a medicine person per se, in that kind of context. And we're all medicine, putting that that medicine to each other, so bring that together. So Bex Worms Farms. Well, in the near future, look out for her store. She will be having it. We'll set it up so she gets some worms. Probably go to the hospitals and local communities to demonstrate, but also share the knowledge, to bring how do you take care of the worms, but also that kind of brings into the nature, and brings all that together. And that, talking about worms, and then when you talk about layers, I didn't even knew that you had, of course we have the oxygen, of course, but the layers of how that foundation of growth, like a tree. So laying that worms down like that also brings that together. And if the kids can see that, just in general, everybody can see that, maybe that would be entice them or encourage them to come out and try it, give it a try, of the worms, the gardens and stuff.
And I really enjoy hearing your stories. This went more deeper than I thought it was going to go.
Oh yeah, it's always
Philosophically deeper. But I'm happy to talk about it.
Yeah, I will be emailing you soon. You can call me.
Yeah,
because we definitely got to talk more about this. And
yeah,
because the people are coming together, and it's just an honor. My mother is telling me, you better do something for the people. And I took Olga and some friends of mine over there to South Dakota. And the first thing she said, she didn't say, "Oh, how you doing, son? I love you, son." None of that. Did you bring the people together? Did you bring them together yet? I'm like, wow. I was like, Mom, you have to have, first thing, you got to have food to bring people together. So I said, look, I didn't get a garden yet. I said, Mom, just hold on. I'm working on it. I got the wonderful team that's bringing it together. So, yeah, it's a constant thing that you're trying to bring that together with all the world together in one, and support each other that way to be strong. So with that, I guess, you got any questions for me, Bex, Denee? No? Okay. All right, then I guess this will conclude tonight. Thank everybody for having us and hosting us. And again, a wonderful night. And it was a very honor to learn about worms. Now I have to get myself some worms. I don't know how I'm going to do that, but I'll have to figure that out.
Thank you for having me.
Yes, and it was an honor to share and know 'cause I never knew about the worms before. I just knew about fishing, but but thank you so much, and hope you stay in touch and stay soon, and enjoy your night. Nope, Shake.